morning, everyone, and welcome to. I just realized this is our 50th episode of the
Wow.
Indica Books author open house with Otis. 50 episodes, and we started sometime, I believe, in August 2020 or November 2020, one of the two dates. So other than the usual holidays and some of the other schedules that people have had, we have been very, very regular now. So gives me great pride that we have done this for 50 weeks, and so many writers, authors have benefited from this. And thank you, Otis, for taking the time to do this over almost what we'll be completing 2 years in a few months. You all know the drill. I'm not going to repeat that without any further ado. I will turn this over to you, Otis.
Okay, thanks so much. Let's see, where are we at? I want this to be bigger. Um, where did Rohini go? She was here. I saw her. Now she's disappeared. Oh, there she is. Okay, okay, everyone. I have. Okay, so sometimes when we start these, Abhinav will say, "When you're here, argue with him, prove that he's wrong. Um, go at him because because I need that because he's very frustrating to me. I want someone to get him, and I get that, but I do want to say like I don't really feel like it's me. So like I feel like the things that I've learned, I've like the world has taught me through the practice of my writing. I don't like these lessons any more than you do. I'm telling you, I do not like them. So we're in the same boat. If we feel frustrated by this need to somehow create a world of imagination that our reader can participate in, if the constraints of that feel frustrating, I'm telling you, I agree. I it's it's the workings of the human mind. It's the fact that we want to reach this other person who is not us and also is not our mom, right? I mean, that's important. They're not our mother. They don't read everything we write and love us regardless of what we do. They're people with their own lives and their own time. So I want to say that for one. The second thing is, I, um, you can see like in my background, I have all this like sports equipment, right? So one thing is like writing is not really natural to human beings. We have to stay active, and I've sort of done that all my life, and I think that writers are very involved in physical processes because that's finally what we're writing about. If we're writing about life, we're writing about physical processes, and writing also is a physical process. And I guess I bring it up a little bit to say that I've always been a little bit more of a process person, maybe even than a writer. Like if you put writing aside, I would be like a coach. I'm like I've done quite a lot of coaching, and I love coaching because I love thinking about processes. I love the problem. Like I coached my daughter's soccer team, and I have to manage myself, of course, because there's reality, but there's also me figuring out the problem of how do we win. What is the process that needs to take place in total, in training and the game itself and execution, in the aftermath, all of those things. I have to think like, how do we win? So we're very process oriented. So I'm bringing this all up for a purpose because we are, as a group, we develop into a, I kind of want to make you more of a team a little bit. I'm just being honest about my inclinations. And so I wanted to bring up something. So next week I'm not going to be able to be here because I have to travel down to LA, but I will be back the weekend afterwards. So we've been talking a little bit about process and about writing. So my main thing is that writers write, and to to overcome my writer's block, that this took place in, I know pretty well, it was 2003. That was the last time I had writer's block. So I had writer's block in 2003, and it didn't go away right away, but I had to work at it. Basically, this is another one of my theories, is that if you have a problem of some kind and you never do anything to correct it, you still have the problem. Does that make sense? That's what I think. So anyway, I took a course. I was in Palo Alto at the time, and I took a course at Stanford about writer's block. They had one that was taught by a physiologist, of all things, a sports physiologist, and that makes sense to me. I mean, artists are athletes. We just work with some different physical structures, you know. So he taught this course, and the one thing I took away was the gem that I took away was write for 5 minutes a day. And from that, I developed I started keeping a logbook. It was just a little tiny book that I made.
And what it can see that, but maybe if maybe when I zoom into it, I can see more details. But generally, what were you writing in there? What kind of?
So this is the thing. I I don't think it matters that much what you write. I wouldn't take up a lot of time with it. The point is to do something. So you commit to writing for 5 minutes a day. You can write for more, but I will tell you the two most important things with writing are this: to start writing and to stop writing. Those are the two most important things with writing. So start, but also stop. Because if you don't stop, then you don't do all the other things you have to do in your life. And then maybe not tomorrow, maybe not the next day, but next week, next month, next year, sometime this is going to break down because your life is going to break down. So you have to take care of other things in your life. But you have to start. So that's what the 5 minutes does. And then it doesn't mean that you just write for 5 minutes necessarily, but after 5 minutes you can go, whoo, and then you can write down something in this book. I write down the date. I write down the start time. I write down the stop time. And then I put a little check by it. That's it. Because basically the idea is that I'm giving myself a success model. I'm giving myself a reward. If I don't write, I write no writing. That's a punishment, right? And then I put no writing. And then the next day I tried to put writing down. I don't want to have no writing and no writing. Okay, so it's a very simple thing of basically reward. It's just for myself, or punishment, and I keep track of it. You would be surprised how quickly I began to sit down to write for 5 minutes a day so that I could reward myself with writing what I wrote, writing that I wrote instead of writing that I didn't write. Because I perceive of myself as a writer. Writers write. That's the base. And so long as I'm writing, then I am a writer. If I'm not writing, then I have no identity. Then I'm like, who am I? So I'm bringing it all up to say that since I'm going to be gone, and also because we want to have a little bit more work to look at, that I'm going to put the challenge out. It's not that you have to accomplish the challenge. You just have to try to accomplish it. Okay? So
What is it?
yeah.
Sorry, it reminds me of what the Amazon Kindle app does. If you have it on the phone, what it does is one of the things that it shows you is what has been your reading streak in terms of how many weeks have you read in continuation. So if I have read at least one day in a particular week, that counts as a check mark. So it shows me I've read continuously for, I don't know, something like 70 weeks or so. And then they have another statistic that shows how many days have I read in a row. And I didn't pay much attention to it earlier on, but after it touched 40 or 50, it became like, yeah, I should make sure I read every day, even if it is for 5 minutes, so that I don't lose it. And I think for writing, it works similarly in pretty much the same way. Once you get 5, 10, 15, 20 days in a row where you have written at least, as you say, 5 minutes, then I think the mind itself doesn't want to let go of that streak that has built in. And it says, for example, on my Kindle app, it shows I've read 74 weeks in a row. And for the days, it was like, all of January, all of February I read, and then something happened on the 21st of March, I didn't read. So it went from something like 70 days in a row to 0.
Yeah, so right, and I don't think it's necessarily a coincidence that I took a course at Stanford taught by a Stanford physiologist, and that then Silicon Valley adopted some of these strategies in their algorithms. I mean, we're animals. We operate in certain ways. Our brains work through essentially a reward and punishment system, and that's all we're doing. We're just doing just a little bit of it that's corresponding to our wishes. And so, since we are all here, we're all saying that we want to be writers. I'm offering you the premise that writers write. It isn't that writers publish. It isn't. It's that we sit down and write. That's our identity. This is the craft and art. This is our skill, and the one that we're developing. So I think at first I maybe did write every single day. I don't. I definitely take a day off now. I have to try to be okay with not writing. So I usually don't on, let's say, Saturdays or something like that. But I so overdo it almost every other day. But let's try. I'm just going to offer to you all, make it analog. This is an amazing technology, pens and paper. So make it analog, and maybe start a little writing log and keep track. And in 2 weeks, we'll see how we did. And come and say, I wrote the first week, I did 5 days. I actually don't really care about the overall time. We're not in competition with each other by any means. The first week I did 5 days, and the next week was 4. It felt really hectic. So I definitely have to when it feels hectic, and that takes, you have to take care of the rest of your life. The other big thing with writing, I think, that I sometimes discuss in my classes is that we have to let the other people in our lives know that they're going to be okay, even if we're not involved in their lives. So assure the other people in your life that you still love them. They still are, number one, right? But there's this other number one, and it's okay. It's okay. Okay, so that's my little pep talk for today. Try that out. Little logbook, just the dates. It's nothing big. I always get students that are like, how do I do it right? Please forget all that. Okay, I also am a big fan of teaching anti-perfectionism. Anti-perfectionism. Perfectionism is not my thing. You might have noticed. Okay. Rohini, let's talk about your piece.
Hi, for these wonderful sessions.
Oh, great. Are you better off not using video? How's your video connection this week?
Am I not on the screen?
You are now.
I don't know if it's working. Yeah. Okay.
No, you are on the screen, Rohini. We can see you, we can hear you. We're just not sure whether the video at your end is also whether it has got any issues or quality issues, or if you're experiencing any audio or video lag.
Maybe, Rohini, would you mind?
There is a bit of a lag. It's still uncertain, but it seems it's still a bit.
So,
Needs to be functional.
so may I suggest if you want to switch off your video, that will help with the bandwidth.
Yeah. Yeah, is that better? Can you hear me?
Yeah, great. Thank you. Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Okay, so Rohini, tell us a little bit um, about this piece that you have. Oh wait, let me share. Sorry, that's my fault. Did I share it yet? Oh, I have shared it already. Do you see your piece in front of you, Rohini?
Yes, I can see her.
Yes,
I
I
can
do.
see her
I do.
screen.
Okay, great. Okay, so tell us a little bit about this piece.
Just 800 words of what will be based on the life of Sita, who is the character from the Ramayana. And I don't think there's enough said from her point of view. So I want to write a novel entirely from her point of view.
Okay.
This is the beginning. And so
I think we are experiencing some audio issues, right? I don't know if you also are, Otis.
I am, yeah. The audio is cutting in and out.
So if Rohini ji can hear without, can hear you, Otis, without any issues, then perhaps we can skip the readout part, or if you can read it or I can read it in her place, that might be.
Abhinav, you're way ahead of me. I like this. I feel like we're becoming more and more of a team. We're like a comedy duo.
I walked right into it, didn't I? Okay, no, just kidding. I'd love to read Rohini ji's piece. So where should I start from?
You're absolutely right, because I'm thinking to myself, it's like, well, I could read it, except for there's so many names that I get wrong, and it's so burdensome. It's actually worse. It's worse than having a bad bandwidth, isn't it? It's like worse, because it's like, no, this is happening on purpose. This is not a technological problem.
Okay, so should I start from this line where you have right below, where you have Kekai?
I actually. So let me set it up a little bit. So I think we have Sita, and I'm not exactly sure what has taken place, but I think that there's going to be a large ceremony, and she's being told that the ceremony is off, and we have another character. Basically, I've started here where another character enters the scene. I just want to set up a little bit that's very typical of the action of a story beginning. Sometimes we call it, like, if you watch any of the, film noir, film noir, like, Bogart and, that age of Hollywood, I tend to call it like, in walks the dame, right? Everything's going fine, but then in walks the dame,
yes.
right? So,
yes.
and it's actually it's become a phrase. They even say the dame. The dame is a thing, which is, it doesn't have to be a woman, but the dame is the thing that disrupts the story. Everything's going fine, but then there's the dame, that blows it all up, basically. So that's where I wanted to start. And Abhinav, I actually, because we had a little more time, I wanted Rohini to read. I wanted to read quite a bit of this because I wanted to use it as an illustrative example. So I'm going to actually, if you could just read it from here, and I'll move down. It's not much farther, but if you could read to the end, because I want everyone to realize that, while there are things that I'm marking in this piece, and that's just little things, and it's according to my ear, and it's very micro, but the macro issue is being handled. The macro issue is that this scene is completely imagined, and when I hear it, I imagine what's happening. That's what's key. And so I want us all to kind of listen to Abhinav reading. We can even close our eyes if we want to. No one can see us. And, imagine the scene that he's reading. And Abhinav, if you're reading off of mine, I'll move it when you get closer to the end, okay?
Okay, so, okay, great. Here goes. Kekai came in like a storm, waving a hand to dismiss the maids. They ran. They were all afraid of her. Kekai was a big, hard muscled woman who wore her sari tucked in as if it was ready for battle and strode in with a warrior's stride. She smiled at her. They were so different. Sita, with her quiet, glowing beauty, large eyes, lustrous hair, and gentle manner, and Kekai, solidly muscled and hard as nails. And yet they were so alike. Sita was the one person who did not fear Kekai. I never meant to hurt you, Kekai said. Sita was used to her abrupt speech and laughed. I know that, mother. I have learned so much from you. You are like my daughter, Kekai said, and you have a maturity far beyond your years. So tell me, did you think it strange that this coronation was called in such a hurry? Sita looked at her warily, suddenly aware of where this was going. Kekai had always claimed the throne belonged to her son Bharat, though Ram was the eldest. But it was true that the coronation had been arranged in almost indecent haste. She had not expected Ram to be crowned for years, but the decision had been taken a week ago, and since then the whole kingdom seemed to be running at breakneck speed to get the arrangements done in time. Did you? Yes, Sita said honestly. Did it seem strange to you that the king has arranged it when Bharat has gone home to my mother's? Yes, Sita answered, but perhaps it is because the king is sick and did not want to wait. And does it seem even stranger that he did not bother to inform me? That I only found out because my maid Manthara took the washing to the roof as usual and saw the decorations? That must have been a mistake in the rush of preparations, perhaps. Kekai was pacing as if she was ready to punch holes in the solid stone walls. She said, you know, sometimes situations get out of control. Do we have to talk about all of this now? Sita said, I'm so happy today. The coronation will not happen, Kekai said. She sounded so certain that Sita just stared at her. I don't understand what you're saying, Sita said. What is going on? My maids were crying and now you? I have demanded that the king keep his promises. Go to Ram's mother and let her tell you at once. Sita said, Kekai said, and with that she rose and left, saying over her shoulder, forget the mehndi, you don't need it.
Okay. Thank you, Abhinav, for reading that piece.
Thank you. Thank you.
So there are a couple things that that I'll bring up. For one thing, Rohini, I still remember some of your other work. Okay, so I just want to say one of the reasons that we write and one of our aspirations in writing is we want people to remember what we've written after they've read it. Okay, it's sure that they read it. I mean, I've read some books. I couldn't tell you a word that I read afterwards. You know, uh,
Yes.
I, even I might have enjoyed it. I might have really enjoyed it. I was doing something, I was passing time, and it was great while I was doing it, but later, no, nothing. And then there's other books that I've never forgotten. There are books that have been that I've read where there's scenes that I've taken so deeply into my body that I believe that they have happened to me. I place that at a higher level. That's me. Okay, different strokes for different folks. There are a lot of people who just want to be involved in a world and then come out of it and forget about it. That's fine. I don't judge. Okay, I do judge. No, I'm kidding. I don't judge. But I want
Yes.
these other experiences. I want these things that add to my life. The first time I had that in a major way was when I was in seventh grade in the U.S. and I read Jack London, and I was in the point of view of a dog that was in a dog fight. And I was like, I never forgot that. That was like, I like that experience.
Yes.
When I read Crime and Punishment, there are scenes in Crime and Punishment that I wish I could forget, right? But I can't. I can't forget them. So, Rohini, I will say that I still remember your pieces. I don't think anyone writes powerful women as well as you do. I will just say that when I read. So I just hope that you keep going to that strength. I mean, I believe every single thing that you write about these powerful women, and I know that you are a powerful woman because you're able to write it. I are just like these warriors who come out, are just like they just fill the space. I love it. You don't there's a in I do boxing, right? And there's a saying in boxing, you practice and you practice and you do your stuff, your things, but eventually you just have to let your hands go. You let your hands go. you do that when you write these women characters,
Yes.
and I really like that. There's no holding back. Um,
Thank you. Thank you.
sure. Well, thank you for writing it. You know, I really appreciate it. I want those experiences. I mean, I still remember that last piece you wrote about the two. You know, there's the warrior, and then there was the warrior woman who was there, and she's like, "I don't need your help," and she just does some butt kicking. And excuse my language. Um, The other thing that really works here is that you basically when we have in walks the dame, right? So one thing about the dame is very different from the protagonist, and these two characters are very different, like you say. Um, where's the opening? She comes in. There's a little bit with form because I always think that we should set up and then deliver. That's my basic pattern for all writing. So that's a micro issue. So we would say, you know, she came in a big, hard muscled woman, uh, sorry tucked as if ready for battle, waving a hand to dismiss the maids, right? So I want us to be able to see her first and then her action and then complete it and move on. Not she came in like a storm and then it actually becomes a little redundant, waving her hand. She was a big muscled woman. Now I'm learning she's a big muscled woman after I've already seen her on the page. So I want to get the visual description first, then the action, and then the result of the action. So it's basically A, B, C. It's
Yes.
just
Yes.
it's set up and deliver is the way I usually think of it. We set up first, we deliver after, right? So in the same way, we don't write, you know, he turned off, he turned off the experiment because if he left it on, the whole place would blow up. I never write it like that. I never that little word because. I never use that word. I never use the word because. Because means I've reversed the
Yes.
momentum of my work so that I'm going this way, but now I go this way. Instead, I would write the whole lab would blow up. He turned off the machine. I would put it this way and then, right? I always want things to be going forward along with the reader's mentality. It's a tiny issue. But I love that you have these two characters who are different, right? Humphrey Bogart and Lauren Bacall are different. Okay, we don't usually think of that when we think of how effective Humphrey Bogart and Lauren Bacall are in. That's let's say I'm going to use Ingrid Bergman so that we're all talking about what's the movie? Abhinav, help me. Casablanca. So we're all
Casablanca,
Casablanca.
and then there's also the Maltese Falcon, right?
Yes.
right. I
Humphrey
mean, there's
Bogart.
some of the ones that I love. You're right. Maltese Falcon is not actually one of my favorites, but I love Key West. Key West is so good, and then I love the To Have and To Have Not. If you've not seen that, that's the first time Bogart and Bacall were together. It's actually a Hemingway story, Ernest Hemingway story, and a Faulkner, a William Faulkner screenplay. When they brought Faulkner out to Hollywood, and he was just drinking himself to death and writing screenplays for money. Um, it's a fabulous
But
movie.
Casablanca is a favorite of mine. It's got so many things in it that became so cliched over the years, but it is still stunning to see them for the first time in a movie.
Yeah, absolutely. And it did
Yes.
become
I like
cliche,
Casablanca too. Lovely movie.
right? But for us as writers, we want to take the things out because of the thing, our issues are why do things work? So, yes, I mean, and also what's happened to male characters from that point through the present is actually really heartbreaking to me because the masculine characters have become so one-dimensional. Whereas Bogart, back in those movies, he was a reluctant hero and he was a complex character. He was often a character that did not want to do things. He was selfish and he learns not to be selfish. This is actually very much the course of stories. But now it's not really that. You know, the masculine characters are just aggressive, homicidal maniacs, basically. That's what it is to be a man nowadays. But the things that work out of that movie are not that here's the man, here's the woman. That doesn't matter. It actually doesn't at all. The genders don't matter. That's what becomes stereotyped. What matters is they are different, right? The Bogart character is one way. He has a certain character. A female character could have all of those same attributes. And Ingrid Bergman is another way, right? And they're different. And that's, Rohini, that's what I'm bringing up here, is that you smartly bring together different characters. The reason different characters work is that human beings, we perceive through contrast. Okay? We perceive things through contrast. If all the characters are the same, we would not perceive what was happening. Does that make sense? That's like, I think that's true. So like, this is a very good instinct that you're already developing. And Rohini, I know that you already know this, and you're doing it naturally, and so you have these story capacities embedded, you know, in your system. I'm really saying it for everyone else. Okay, so everyone else, make sure that you develop contrast in your characters, because it works so much better either on the screen or on the page. It doesn't matter, because human beings see in contrast. The other thing is that this piece is active the entire time. Action. Dialogue is action. Thoughts are even action. And you skillfully do this. You give us a backstory element. I'm not sure where you read that now. But anyway, you do give us a backstory element explaining some things, which is the narrator coming in and explaining, and you do it in a paragraph. Did I suggest that you do something like that? Because if I did, I think I'm a genius. Rohini, you can tell me I did anytime.
I-
Okay. All right.
yes,
Fine.
you did. Yes, you did.
No, this is what I've been telling you to do, you know, but you're doing it. I know you're doing it naturally, because I can tell by the style of your writing that you read a lot. And so you've internalized some of these aspects of storytelling. Abhinav is very smart to read every single day. Writers should be reading. It occurred to me the other day, I told my daughter, you know, instead of carrying around your phone, you should carry around a book, and you would have a reputation like you don't even believe in the course of even a year. Everyone would think that you were smart, that you were, they would think totally different things about you than the way most people are nowadays looking at their phone.
Yes.
It's very active.
Yes.
This is very active. Dialogue is action. These two characters, these two characters are not really protagonist and antagonist. So this is something to say about when we're developing our pieces. We have different kinds of characters who play different roles. And so we can think about it like this. I'm going to make a circle. We can put our protagonist in the middle. So Sita is the protagonist. This character who comes in, I'm sure that my technology will glitch as I try to pronounce her name. But anyway, as she comes in, she's an authority figure. So if we think about this character in the middle, they have different relationships with different people. There are people who are authorities. There are people who are rivals or lovers, right? In the middle.
Yes.
And there are people
Yes.
who are maybe subordinate, like children who they protect, or subordinates who they might abuse, I guess. So there are people who are less powerful than them, people who are more powerful than them. It's not always just physical power by any means. It's and often isn't. It's actually sort of structural power, other kinds of things. So authorities, subservient people, and then very pointedly, and this is usually where we're working, rivals. And rivals might be lovers, right? Right. So the boy meets girl, boy loses girl, etc., etc. That is Bogart and Bergman. They're really rivals for what is the best plan for going forward. That's, you know, um, so we have these two characters are really they're really helpers with each other. It seems like they're not really the antagonists. So the major action of this story, the major antagonistic conflict, is not on the page yet. I don't think, because I feel this authority figure is coming
Yes.
here to help Sita, and so she's really a helpmate. And that's a particular kind of character that's neither a lover nor a rival. They're really just a helper character and a friend. Friends are a little bit antagonistic in that because they help the character move on to face their difficulty, which might be a bad thing. They don't keep them from that because they help.
She's actually both. This character is both because she's created the problem in the first place, but she
Uh,
also likes Sita and they have a good relationship. So it's a complex relationship, right?
oh, okay. So, well, I hope that we'll see that come out, and we might even see a choice then
Yes.
in terms of her character, in terms of what she does. Brilliant. Rohini, I love this piece. It's great. You are just a person. I mean, when I think about this thing, I think about you. You must keep
Thank you.
writing.
I've been keeping a diary from 1985, daily diary.
So this isn't a diary, of course. This is marking down your writing your fiction. So our diaries are a little bit
Yeah,
different.
that,
This is the thing doing this really hard thing that we're trying to do, which is to write something that other people are going to read. You know. So um,
yes, yes,
so I want to just make sure that you're doing that too. And
I
I
am. I am.
okay, good. Thank you so much for this work.
Thank you. Sure.
Okay, Ray, Ray, sorry, Jay. Sorry, Jay. Jay, let's look at your work.
Yeah, hi Otis.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Um, Still staying out of harm's way, I hope,
Thus far, yeah.
thus far. Yeah. Okay. Let's see. I'm looking for your. Let's see. This is it. Okay, Jay, tell us a little bit about this piece.
This is a slightly old one. I wrote this when I was learning Russian. So as I was struggling with the language and I was trying to get the hang of it, and I mean, I had 2.5, 3 months of classes, and I had a bit of the basic vocabulary, and I went out on hikes with a group of hikers, none of whom spoke any English. So Russian was all the medium of communication we had. So this is about I mean, based on whatever I felt during the day, during the hike, I came back in the evening and then I wrote this.
Huh. Okay. I did not know. So, you're in Belarus now.
Yeah,
I'm gonna look up Belarus. And how's your Russian now?
reasonably good. I've given live TV interviews in Russian.
Wow, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. I had a friend at Stanford, Scott Hutchins. He wrote his book, and
Hmm.
he claimed to be able to speak French. And then if we doubted him, he said, "Well, I did give a TV interview in French in Paris." And then sure enough, there he was speaking French in Paris, and I was like, how irritating that was. Well, that is awesome, Jay. I'm gonna try and push you to write about some of these things that you know so well. I mean,
Hmm.
you are one of the few people who knows something about Belarus for most of the world. So, do you speak Hindi as also,
Yeah, I speak Hindi. I speak another Indian language, which is my mother tongue. It's called Tamil. It comes from the south of India.
and you speak Russian?
Yeah.
Holy smokes, my friend! Oh my goodness. I love languages. I love the way languages make us think differently.
Hmm.
And and It's quite a lot to draw on, and you also have these areas to draw on that I've never seen before. Most people have not seen before, but you have
Hmm.
experiences that most people don't have. So I really hope that you'll do some thinking about how you can use. So I think writing is basically, you probably already know this, but writing is basically it's an act of um, hiding your weaknesses and amplifying your strengths.
Hmm.
Okay, so you hide your weaknesses. The things you can't do, don't do. No one knows you can't do them until you try. So hide your weaknesses, amplify your strengths.
Hmm.
And you have definitely amplified strength in languages and in experience that I hope you'll draw upon in your work.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, I read this piece, and oh, let's have you read a little bit. It's pretty short here. I'm going to have you just read this paragraph here.
Okay. I wonder what happens when we speak, you and I, in languages that are bright as sunlight to the speaker, but foggy and confusing to the listener. What happens to the numerous thoughts that trickle away, misting the surface of the dark canopy of the secret world of our conversations? Thoughts rising up to the canopy, touching its cold innards, cooling to teardrops, crying in despair, and falling as homesick rain that looks to fall in the same pond it evaporated from. The pond is filled with the ripples of our conversations. Drops fall on the glass bangles of the ripples, breaking them with the weight of their loneliness.
Nice. Okay, great. So, Jay, I was thinking while you were reading, I I appreciate that you use metaphors. I was just thinking about my own work, and I use metaphors a great deal.
Mhm.
I think that through using metaphors, we begin to understand things in new ways, and it's one of the major ways that I've sort of discovered. I feel whatever I think of as truths about the world. I feel like I've discovered those truths through metaphor. A metaphor simply is taking two things. The 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 structure of metaphor is this: you take two things that are not the same, right? And you
Yeah.
basically say they're the same, so that they have this quality, this dual quality of not being the same and being the same at the same time, right? So it's like irony, it's like a couple other ideas like that. And I think it breaks down some barriers I think we can have as human beings in terms of our thinking. We can become too rigid basically in our thinking. We think that there is this and that thing and this thing. There's grasshoppers and trees and light bulbs, and we think that the world is made up of all these discrete elements, and we don't understand that there's things that connect the elements. So I think it's a very powerful way for us to think. This piece is essentially can feel like it's all metaphor, and so like on both sides. So here we have language. Language is like mist, and then it's and like you say, like in the way you follow it in this paragraph, right? It's you say something like language is, it can be either sunlight or it can be foggy and confuse the listener, and then it becomes a mist that's on the surface of the dark canopy of the secret world of our conversations. Thoughts rising up because now it's like the mist is evaporating and it hits the top of the thing, and then it's going to drip down. Like all of that is pretty amazing. The problem is that I'm not grounded in anything, like as a
Hmm.
reader. So it's a wonderful intellectual activity, and I have to admit that I indulge in these sort of intellectual activities a lot, and I have a lot of trouble giving them up. But I do tend to ground them in a lot of physical events because I want to keep my reader. The reader can't. What the reader wants to do is that they want to basically go into your story and participate in the story as the protagonist. That's the basic element of how story works. I think there's some problems with that, but that's a more advanced conversation to have. But the basic way that stories work is that I'm bored in my own life and I want to read something that's exciting and happening to someone, and so I get to pretend that I'm them and I get to have the experience. It's like, I mean, writing is the original virtual reality. That's basically what it is. It was virtual reality before they invented virtual reality. It was the first, video game, first person shooter video game. You basically get to participate in the experience. When it's all abstract on both sides, you basically have language, which is kind of abstract, and it is abstract in the way you're talking about it because someone's not saying the language, you're talking about the language. So that's an abstract thing. And then the mist is not a real mist. He's not looking at the rain. So there's nothing concrete on both sides of that metaphor. We have something abstract on this side, something abstract on this side. You're kind of saying that they're different, but it's hard to tell how because they're actually, and this is the kicker, they're too similar. The way metaphors work the best is that they must both be different and then they're also the same. That's the fundamental way that metaphors work. So that means that they must be different enough, and that way we actually discover something by joining them together in the metaphor. There's like some famous lines. I'm going to try and think of one. I used to teach composition in the university, and you've probably taken it, but I never did this myself because I'm not like this, but you would have other teachers that would highlight lines that like really didn't work. And one of them was, we were walking down the path and passed a rock that was as big as a boulder. Jay?
Okay.
You see a rock as big as a boulder. They're both rocks.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't say that. So like as
You
a
might as
metaphor,
well just
it
say
doesn't
that we
work.
walked past a boulder.
Right? You just say you walk past a boulder, get on with it. Right?
Yeah.
And in the same way, but oppositely, like the opposite of the rocks, you have language and you have sort of an abstraction of this vapor that's moving through it. So they're both too abstract for me to feel grounded. I'm getting a little bit too complicated with it, Jay. I think the short answer is, gosh, how I would love to have you walking along on a hike with these Russians, right? If you just wrote that and grounded me in that experience, then what would happen is, as I read it, I would be you. I would be you having an experience that I'm going to tell you the truth, Jay, I am never in my life going to have. The only way I'm going to have your experiences, Jay, is by you writing about it and me being able to read about it and participate in it. And then what you want to do is you want to have a character, with your language bases, with all of those things, with your background, hiking with these Russians in some mountains in Belarus. You can't get me not to read that, Jay. And then you want to have something happen. You want to have in walks the dame. What's the dame? Maybe it's one of those rocks as big as a boulder, takes out the leader of the hike. That's what I would have. So
Okay.
it's all a long story to say that I really appreciate, and I'm going to give myself a pat on the back for recognizing this very early on. I definitely see the writer in you, and I see that you are
Thank you.
working with these things. And you know what? The ideas that you're developing here are just something that I was talking about with my partner. We bicker and we do the regular things that couples do. And we sort of actually just recently figured out that we actually have a different language. Even we're both speaking English, right? But even between people, like I was constantly reminded of it in this piece. I was like, they don't have to actually be speaking different languages for them not to have the same language. We all have an individual language. And I think you're kind of getting to that in this piece. And I think that that's a very sophisticated idea. And I think you're, essentially too young to have ideas that are, similar to the great ideas I have. But that's fine. I have to deal with it. It's very good thinking. I think you're using writing to think. I use writing to think. I am not as smart. I'm not a smart person. I'm a typer, and then the writing is smart, right? So like the writing is smart. I am just the person who types. And I see that you're doing that here. You're exploring things with language, and I think you're coming up with really great stuff. And I would my big suggestion is do have a concrete base, have something concrete,
Okay.
and then use that as your platform for the metaphor, for the larger, because our stories are, in the largest sense, our stories are always a metaphor. Let's say you write about yourself on a hike. That's a story, that's a metaphor for universal experience that I have. So the story in its complete form is a metaphor of universal experience. It seems specific, but it is also not specific. It also has to do with the stories in my life, and that's a metaphor. So that's a long speech on it, Jay. This is an interesting piece, and do not hold back the way that you're using writing to think. And then, then when we add on this idea that we want to, I do use writing to think all the time. I use it to develop pieces. I use it to develop characters. And then I also do know, this is, I guess, my philosophy, that I have to drive down into concrete experience, because that is finally what the reader is going to want. And it's true that, at the end of, if you want to write philosophy, then write philosophy. I don't think anyone reads philosophy. A lot of people read stories. Okay. Because a lot of people are just like me, who are stuck in Eugene, Oregon, during COVID. We have very limited experiences. We have a family. The main thing I do is type and do dishes. That's it. That's my life. Do I want to go on a hike with a bunch of Russians through the mountains of Belarus? Damn tootin' I do. So that's the thing that we give to our reader, is the gift of being able to have some other experiences other than the small ones of their own lives. And that's what you get too. When you read someone, and you probably gravitate towards reading people who are doing things that you'll never do. I know I've always done that. And, I hope to be able to travel the world, but if that doesn't happen, I certainly want to experience it through books. That's it, Jay. That's the speech.
Thank you, Otis.
Okay, let's Vandana, let's look at this piece. Vandana, are you here?
Hello, Otis, I'm there.
Hi, how are you today?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm doing great. Let's take a look at this piece. Tell us a little bit about it. What are you going for?
This is about two girls who have grown up, and now they don't meet. They were friends when they were They were childhood friends, but as they grow up, after marriage and all the responsibilities, they have drifted apart. They have drifted apart due to marriage, due to social responsibilities, and a lot of things that have come in between their friendship that once was very treasured by both of them.
Okay. Okay, can I have you read from this section Andy knew her cousin was adamant. So I'll say for everyone that basically this piece now has what we like to call an envelope structure. Envelope structure, I mean, that as a phrase always confused me, but basically it means that you have two things on the side and you put the story in the middle, right? So, right, would you say that's right, Vandana?
Yes.
So you basically have the cousin calling, saying, let's get together. Then we have a story, basically a backstory of the two girls when they're young, and then we return to the present. And Vandana, do you feel that this story is completed? Or were
No,
you going to write on?
I think I have to write more.
Okay. Well, it's something to think about, but our structure is sort of what happens with the envelope structure is that we basically present a problem of some kind. We have the story in the middle, and that sort of leads to the other side of the envelope. So, like in this story, the cousin calls and says, "Hey, let's get together. Let's do something." So it's like, and the one cousin who's the protagonist, answers Andy, and she's like, "I don't know, maybe, maybe not." And then we go into the backstory, and it could be a complete story, and we could have this backstory developed. And then when we come back, we could have the person on the phone, Andy says, "I'm not sure that I can make it. I'm actually really busy today." Click, right? So in that way, we have the problem that's introduced in the first envelope, B, the backstory, what their relationship is like, and that basically leads to C, the closing of the envelope, which is no, I don't want to see you, or yes, I do want to see you. So the story structure is almost always, someone will have to show me when it's not this way, A plus B equals C. It is not rocket science. And I feel like, so I'm just suggesting that you could have that here. This is traditionally called an envelope story, but even if it's called an envelope story, it's still A plus B equals C. It's always basically the same thing. So are our sentences, by the way, generally. Except for, I think, German. In German, I think it's B, C, A. So for those of you who know your German, not fun. Okay. Yeah, so read from Andy here, and then I think I'll have you maybe just read to here. I'll move it down for you when you get there.
Okay.
But yeah.
Andy knew her cousin was adamant. She treasured the feeble relationship with her cousin and did not want to sever ties with her, as she had done with the rest of the family. Andy's time moved back. Stop, stop. You will break your bones. Do not be greedy. I will give you some more from my stock. A well-built guard, Lal urged the girls. Go ahead, Meena. You need not stop. He's fooling you, said Antara. I know the last time he did not give one mango and he complained to mother, replied Meena. Okay, break your bones in break your bones in the sweltering heat and get scolding from your mother, especially you, Meena. Lal tried to reason out. Meena had scaled the trunk of the mango tree. Antara was on the terrace. She started the negotiation. Okay, Meena. Okay, Meena will come down. But how many mangoes will you give us? Or will you fool us by giving small, rotten mangoes and complaining to Auntie? I will give you 2 each and will not say a word, Lal replied. Meena revolted. No, why should I settle for 2 when I can have the whole mango tree? You can go and complain to my mother. I'm not scared. Lal thought this was useless deal and left. Antara sighed. You should negotiate with Lal. We should have bargained with him to give us more mangoes. He will. Okay.
Yeah. I'll have you stop there. So I really this is a little bit like Jay's Belarus. I'm here in this backstory. I'm in this environment where these kids are climbing and picking the mangoes. And again, this is not really an environment that I'm used to. I've traveled some places in Mexico and needed to climb the trees to get the coconuts, and then they're very hard to open actually. With a knife, and in order to have something to drink. So I've had that experience a little bit, but it is a very exotic experience for me. I love being in that environment, and I love how active it is, and how you commit to showing the relationship between these two girls and then later women by going to this story that's very active. They've done something together that really shows them. So I like that, and I think that the envelope structure can basically work. My comments on this piece for both of these sections that we want to do. So I do have this is a little bit of a rule that I'll just share with everyone. Phone conversations are terrible in writing, just because going back to the principle of in walks the dame. So in walks the dame basically puts a characters here, they're by themselves, they're isolated. If you want to watch something, a sophisticated rendition of this at its very height in film noir, you would watch Chinatown. Great movie, but not for the squeamish. But you have a character who's in isolation. The character that's introduced, right? They're introduced physically into the space. Having two characters in a physical space is much more tense, basically, than having two characters who are talking on the phone. Does that follow a little bit? Abhinav, do you see what I mean by that? Because the basic premise is that you're creating tension. The tension is created by two people, and the two people are in the same space. That's what makes it tense. You basically put these two animals, you put a tiger and a gorilla in the same cage together, and that's a problem, right? Two different people, they want two different things, they're diametrically opposed. This creates tension. However, if you keep them in their own cages, there's less tension. So I'll just bring that up for everyone to sort of, I've often thought, if I could have every failed telephone conversation back in that time, I would still be a young man. That's a little bit of a joke. It's very hard. So that's something that I would, maybe suggest, that it would be that in this story, if you want to raise the tension right away, you could actually have these two characters meet, right? Maybe we want to be really fluid, even though you might think like this might be a real relationship that you're drawing upon, and maybe even a real experience you're drawing upon. When we translate things into stories, we want to maximize everything. Stories are completely maximal. You might not believe that because when you're reading, you might be bored sometimes or wonder why you're doing it. But really, stories, when they're written, are maximalized. So rather than having two characters talk on the phone, let's put them someplace. One way I sometimes express this is you put your protagonist and antagonist on a lifeboat, right? You put them in this little space, and that's actually, going back to Casablanca, that's what that is, right? Casablanca is a lifeboat, right? The war is everywhere. The world around is scary and terrifying, and all those characters are on a lifeboat. They're okay for the moment, but they're making decisions that are going to change their lives. So that's something that you could think about with this story. And I note here that you can establish the setting wherever it is. I will go back to my main points, which is your reader. The only thing we know about our reader is this, it seems to me. They want to leave their lives behind, and they want to enter into our world. So I think when we write a story, we have to make a contract to offer them a world. That is the setting. That is the place. The more interesting that place is, I think, the better, because we want everything maximalized. We don't want things to be generic. We don't want a generic house. We don't want a generic phone. We don't want a generic city, a generic suburb, generic hospital room. We don't want anything generic. We always want to establish a setting that is particular. That's a way to signal to our reader that they're leaving their generic world behind, what they're used to, and they're going someplace new. We're just going to call this, from now on, we're just going to call this Belarus, right? So you have to create your Belarus here, where the reader is going to feel like they're going to be able to go and they're going to have a new experience that they've never had before. And the other thing is to establish the point of view. So we want to make sure that we're in someone's mind. That's basically the signal to the reader that this is the person that you're going to be seeing the world through. Vandana, those are my few comments, but I think that this is a really great start.
Thank you. But how can I change the setting? You didn't like the phone calls.
No, it's not changed the setting. It's actually just developed. Well, you can do it easily. I mean, all we're doing is typing. So instead of where does this phone call take place?
Pardon?
Where is it?
Where does this? I couldn't get
Yeah.
you.
Like, does it take place in Mumbai, or does it take place in a city? Does it take place in a town
Uh,
or a village?
it takes place in a city,
What city?
Kolkata.
Kolkata?
Yes.
So that's a great start. You know, I can count on no hands how many times I've been to Calcutta. So does that make sense? I want to go to Calcutta. So you have to tell me that it's there. I don't know where it is unless you tell me. When you're having a phone call, I kind of imagine, because I'm still like not on cell phones, you know, right? But I sort of imagine it's in a house. So that might not be true anymore. But if I had Calcutta to work with, I don't have Calcutta. I wish I did. I don't know it. But if I had Calcutta to work with, I would try and get these two characters physically present with each other someplace in Calcutta, and I would want that place in Calcutta to somehow have an influence on the story that I'm going to tell. So this is sort of my, I sometimes call it like my Hemingway advice, but like when Ernest Hemingway wants to write a story about a father and a son, he doesn't have them have a phone conversation. He doesn't have them sitting down at dinner. He puts them on a deep sea fishing boat, fishing for marlin, when their ship is attacked by a whale or hits a rock and is now sinking. He's creating an environment that's very active. So maybe Hemingway knew about deep sea fishing, probably not, or maybe he knew about all these things, who knows? He was a writer. He had those things. You have your things as a writer. You have the things that you know that are going to be great for some other reader that does not know those things to read about. So use those things. Does that make some sense in terms of how you might develop the setting?
Yes.
Develop the setting so that when I open up the page, I realize that I'm not just in my generic living room where I've been all my life, but instead I'm someplace in Calcutta that I've never seen before, with these characters that have some real issue and tension with each other. And I'm going to wonder what's going to happen.
Sure, I'll do that.
We have to remember, all of us as writers, I think that we can feel so inhibited, right? When we write, writers, we're a strange group. You know, I think we basically would love to be actors. You know, we would love to get on the stage and we would like to play the clown and do all these things. but we're a little bit more inhibited in that. So we just want to be alone and we want to type. So that's okay. But we have to, even in our typing, we really have to be larger than life. It's not even larger than life. The life is there, but we want to really come out onto the stage and possess it. We don't want to be afraid if we can. We try not to be inhibited. We want to use all of our tools, not just some of them. And our tools are really these: to have a setting where the reader gets to feel like they go into another world, to have an issue of tension that the reader wonders how is it going to resolve. And then we want to surprise the reader with everything that moves us towards the resolution of that problem. But this is a great start. I like these characters. I like the character of Andy. I like this character of Andy as she's depicted because she's somehow severed her relationships with other people in her family. And this cousin is the only person that she has left. But it's not an untroubled relationship and they have a past. I think that that's a great start. And I would like to find out what happens with this character. And that's it.
So I think, Otis, that also clears your backlog, right? Whatever stories that had been submitted, writing pieces that you had and not yet reviewed in these sessions, you're done with all of them, right?
I think so. I think I'm up to date.
Perfect, which means that now people have to make sure that in the next 2 weeks they send in enough writing pieces. Otherwise, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for us to have this session with just 1 or 2 writing pieces. I think we need 3 or 4 for it to be a meaningful session, right?
It would be great to have some more. And like I say, I do not mind whether we get pieces that are worked over. I know, some of you writers are different. Some people don't like to show their writing until they've really worked it over a lot because they feel like, they might be embarrassed. And some people are okay with showing fresh work. But I'm happy to look at any kind of work. And I'm very understanding that writing is a process. We do not. I'm an anti-perfectionist. So yeah, I'll hope to get a few more pieces. But but mainly, whatever you submit, do try and do this. I do want to check in about how you do with your writing every day. I think that'll be fun for us to sort of have that sort of commiseration, because it's hard. You might not do it. You might be able to do it. It might be easy. It might not be easy. I would love to hear from everyone. I know you're all here and committed and you want to write. So I like us being a kind of a little team, and then I can be the coach. I love being a coach.
Absolutely. No, good. I think we will get pieces in. So let's just get the dates right here. You will not be here, so we won't have a session on the 24th of April, but the 1st of May, we should have a session provided we get enough pieces.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. And you have a safe travel. And Jay, you've raised your hand.
Yeah, hi. I don't know if we do have enough time, maybe another 10-15 minutes. I mean, if there is something that, apart from the pieces that I would like Otis to talk about, I mean, if I were to write a non-fiction book, let's say not a word-by-word translation, but a sort of an abridged translation of another work from the 9th century, but this time with illustrations. How do I make a book proposal for that?
I would start there. So there are definitely things like how to make a book proposal.
Oh, wow. There's a book on that.
Yeah. So you're asking a question that I really can answer, Jay. I appreciate that. There's quite a few. The main thing with making a book proposal is definitely read through a book about it. We can sometimes think that making a book proposal is going to be easier than writing the book. And in nonfiction, it's basically the form. But writing a book proposal means that you're doing almost everything except for writing the book.
What's the author's name?
This
Is it Michael
one-
Larson?
Yep.
Okay, I'm going to share the I'm going to share the book's link on Amazon in just a sec here so that people can refer to it. Yeah.
Yeah, there will be a number of books about making book proposals. What I've found in general is that books about making book proposals and even writing itself, they often offer a lot of pie in the sky, like you're gonna, or write a script in 10 days. It's a lot of pie in the sky about getting something done, and you're not really gonna have to work hard to do it. Don't delude yourself. It's whatever it is that you do. If it's writing, it is struggle. It is a struggle. It's hard to rise up, and to do this work. So just take that on. Don't think that you're gonna get something for nothing. Jay, I know you don't think that. So
Okay. And I think that's
Thank
it.
you.
So thank you, everyone. And we'll hopefully see
Thank
all of us again
you.
on the 1st of May.
Thank you.
yeah, great. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay.